Welcome to the Market Frontlines. I'm Lyndsay Malchuk. Now, tungsten is the metal everyone pretends is boring until the lights go out, until the planes stop flying, major defense systems falter, and military tech stalls out. The West is bleeding control of critical resource, and Almonty Industries is the company refusing to stand by and watch that happen. With top producing operations at Panasqueira in Portugal and now the newest opening at Sangdong in South Korea, Almonty is rewriting the rules of supply, scale, and reliability. Now, sitting with us today is the man standing up and saying, this is enough. Lewis Black, CEO of Almonty Industries. Mr. Lewis Black, our very first interview right here with Appeton. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks, Lyndsay, for having me. And that's quite a build-up. I hope I don't disappoint you or the viewers. But I'm going to do my very best
Perfect.
to keep it light and concise and actually accurate.
Well, then let's kick things right off. And we're going to start right with the global supply chain. We know more than 90% of the world's tungsten comes from China, creating that single point of vulnerability that governments and industries can no longer ignore. So while others talk about the problem, you're actively building that alternative. So how is Almonty positioning itself to become that stable supplier the West has been waiting for?
Well, to be perfectly honest, by complete luck, because we've been in this a long time. We are the last credible man standing. Mm-hmm. We were very fortunate to pick up what we consider to be the best project on the planet in Korea. It was coveted by everybody. We just found a small window where we could actually acquire it. And we were able to finance it with the right people. Mm-hmm. We were able to put together governments to work with us, hard floor contracts, no caps on the upside. And then, of course, this geopolitical mess emerged. So we found ourselves not just as the primary source for multiple sectors as we've always been, but now we find ourselves the kind of cornerstone to existing and future or short-term future, Western supply. So it's a very unusual situation that we did not envisage we would be in when we started this journey all those years ago.
Well, on top of all of that, you recently hit a major milestone that I want to talk about, and we need to really hold space for that here. Your NASDAQ listing, as well as a $90 million financing. So that's a bold move in today's markets. So how are you putting that capital to work, and what strategic priorities are the top of your agenda to accelerate that growth then?
Well, I mean, we were really, so far as I know, and looking back over 30 years, we're the first operating tungsten company to list on the NASDAQ.
Amazing.
We, again, were told that, is it going to work? NASDAQ, is it going to be appetite? But they told me that about, tier one project finance lending. And they told me that about hard floors. They told me I had to do all the usual stuff. I'm one of those unusual managers in a junior mining company that actually puts his own millions of dollars of his own money into this. So, this was another one of those things where everyone told me it was a bad idea. And what we actually saw was during the road show that I did, and I did an awful lot of meetings, we had a 95% conversion rate, and we were oversubscribed, I think, by 4 or 4.5 times. And so there was a huge appetite for what we were doing. And I think that was really about the kind of company that we kept in terms of, KfW or hard floor contracts with Planty Group, just as a few examples. And in terms of what the capital was used for, well, firstly, we find ourselves in a position where we have a number of governments indicating they would like us to go further downstream. So we'd be the only independent, transparent and vertical tungsten oxide smelter on the planet that's available, that's in a good jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. And I think with this money, we were able then to meet the equity components of that project. KfW have already expressed the interest to do the debt piece, and it's something which we will be working on more aggressively shortly as Korea comes online right about now. But I think it's very important that this was an uncharted moment for a tungsten company. I'm sure others will try and follow, but as they say, no one ever remembers who came second.
If you're not first, you're last. That's the saying.
Exactly.
Now, Lewis, I want to shift here just a little bit and bring up the elephant in the room. Geopolitics is another force that needs to step aside and, allow more to come in. So rising tensions are still happening, shifting alliances are still happening, and resource nationalism are shaping the entire critical minerals landscape. Where do you see that sharpest risk? And just as importantly, the biggest opening for tungsten producers operating outside of China's orbit?
Well, I'm going to answer that question sort of, the end part of it first and then to the first part.
Yeah.
Firstly, I'd like to say quite clearly that, quite frankly, I can't stand any of my competitors on a personal note. But I need them all to succeed. And this is purely from a self-serving point of view. If my customers, and I love them all, but quite frankly, in terms of raw materials and building the supply chain, they're finding it difficult to get out of a paper bag.
Right.
Is that if they can't find material that's not Chinese, they will starve. And if they starve, I won't have anyone to sell to. So it is in my interest to see all of these projects that are coming out of the woodwork to be successful. Okay. There is an inherent problem, as has been seen repeatedly over the last 15 years, that if you don't know how to mine tungsten and process it, you will fail. So I've taken a decision that over the next 24 months, I'm going to play nice and I'm going to try and help, even if I don't own, because I need the sector to do better. If it doesn't, I'm done too. Okay. And so this is an important part of the strategy. And I think life without China, even if China comes back, you have to remember this is the third time this has happened. First in 2008, when they canceled all of the supply contracts out of China under force majeure, national security. Secondly, when in COVID, there was no shipping, so you couldn't get the material out of China into your sites. And now, of course, with the export permits, it's the third time. And I don't believe any of my customers are going to say, well, you know what, full time they'll be fine. I think reputationally, China is shot, which means I expect China to pivot more towards supplying even further downstream products, components, rather than actually turn the raw materials back on. So we are in a huge cusp of a fundamental shift in how we're going to have to work in this environment. And so for the next 24 months, I'm going to help, and then we can all draw our knives. I can draw my knives again and reassert my position. But until then, I need my sector to succeed. Okay.
Well, then if we talk about that government, the role of the government support through all of that, building strategic supply chains requires more than just a vision. It takes the backing. So how does the support you've received from Western governments compare to what Asian counterparts are bringing to the table? And really, how does that gap help or hinder the progress of your sector, as well as Almonty specifically?
Well, it's really an unusual question, because that would allude to the fact that I believe that government should be involved in the development of a supply chain. That really is the reason we're in this situation in the first place, because that's exactly what China did. Are we looking just to transplant what China did now into the West? It's not a free market approach, and it has to be a free market approach for these projects to be successful, because only the cream rises to the top. That's how the free market works. If you're good, you survive and you win. If you're not, you fail. Now, I also understand that we're playing a catch-up. So I look at it, someone asked me this earlier today, and I said, the best way I can think to describe it is US government is like dad. And he's saying to the kids, that's like people like me, here's some money, get out the house, I believe in you, I need what you're going to do, I love you, I respect you, build it for me. They're not saying, I'm going to give you the money to do it, here's the money for the rest of your life. They're just giving a little seed money to get you going. Right. And I think this is the best approach. I think giving someone that little bit of gas to go and change the world is much better than saying, as a government, let's change the world.
Well, I mean, I love that answer. I mean, it really does sum up that it resonates more for people to understand. So thank you for that. Finally, Louis, let's talk about price momentum here. I mean, tungsten prices have been climbing, and the demand story as well. From defense to aerospace to semiconductors, it's only growing louder. So do you expect this price strength to continue, and really what the key demand drivers investors should be watching for over the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, as probably, I'm probably one of the biggest investors in tungsten because I'm still here, and I've done this a long time. I see the current price as a reflection of the lack of 90% of the market being available. So that's what's driving this. But there's something else to consider. We've had a price band of 250 to 350 MTU for many years because of the Chinese subsidies to the mines. That was the subsidized price that existed. Those subsidies came to an end last year. I expect for those Chinese mines to maintain the same margins of sort of 12 to 18% that they've enjoyed for all those years with a subsidy, you'll need pricing somewhere between 450 and 550. That will be the band. Right now we're at what, 650, but 450 to 550 to me is the mid to long-term price band. And all of my calculations are still done in the old format of 300, but there will be a resetting of price because this subsidy has gone. And because ultimately China, in my view, of course, and I'm by no means right on everything, but in my view, China has done this because in this instance, they are embracing the free market because they understand that to preserve a scarce and declining resource requires correct and efficient management. And when you receive a subsidy, you don't manage it correctly. Right. You know, like the Soviets or Venezuelans said, you pump seawater into your wells to inflate your production. This is no different. I believe the whole process of reducing the subsidies over a 4-year period and finally getting rid of them last year was to encourage the mines that could survive that adjustment to be more lean and efficient. And that will mean they will need higher prices. Wow. And so that's really my outlook on pricing. Right now, we're in this bizarre blip, and who knows how high it can go. I mean, when you look at antimony, when you've lost 90% of the market, all bets are off. But my planning mid to long term is in this new band of 450 to 550 because that's just going to replicate the margins that China mines were making with a subsidy.
You know, Louis, it's always such an insightful conversation when you sit here, and I learn so much. Just when I think I know so much more about Almonty and so much more about the tungsten industry, you come along and just teach us so much more. So thank you again for sitting with us and for all of this, and do come back soon.
Thanks very much, Lynn. Thank you for having me, Lyndsay.
Again, that was Louis Black, CEO of Almonty Industries, the leader steering one of the most critical tungsten suppliers in the world, with operations in Panasqueira, Portugal, and Sangdong in South Korea. Almonty trades on the NASDAQ under the ticker ALM and on the TSX as AII. If you aren't already tracking defense, if you aren't already tracking industrial and strategic supply chains, head over to almonty.com to find out why you should be. This isn't just mining, this is precision. It's strategy and influence. I'm Lyndsay Malchuk on the Market Front Lines. Stay tuned for more.